But wouldn't it be absolutely incredible to see the glory of God? I mean, the Bible tells us stories about people who saw fire coming down from heaven, people who saw the sea literally split in two. In the Bible, we hear about how Moses saw the back of God, the after effects of God passing by. And we hear about how Isaiah got to see into the throne room in heaven, and he got to see the train of God's glory. We hear about how Ezekiel saw God's chariot and the living creatures that are devoted to the worship of God. And we hear how Daniel saw the Ancient of Days. We hear how 3 of Jesus' disciples got to see him transfigured, and then how the Apostle John got to see what Jesus will be like when he comes back in all of his glory to judge the earth. I mean, wouldn't it be great to have our own story to tell of we've seen the glory of God. We've seen him in all of his splendor and all of his majesty. We've had this kind of revelation moment that has left us speechless, or like in Isaiah's case, on his face on the floor, trembling. That's not an unusual thing to want and to desire. It's not something that is new. All the way through time, people have cried out to have an encounter with God. And we've been looking really carefully at the gospel, the written account of the life of Jesus, the good news of who Jesus is, written by John, who was Jesus' longest-serving disciple and his closest friend. And we've seen in that gospel how again and again through Jesus' ministry, people challenged him, and they came to him and said, "Prove that what you're saying is true. Show us your glory. Show us some kind of miracle or sign so that we can have confidence that you really are who you say that you are." And John highlights for us 7 of the incredible things that Jesus did. They're not the only 7 things he did. He just picks 7 that he thinks are really clear signs about who Jesus is. That if we're paying attention, if we read the sign correctly, then we would know without a doubt who Jesus is and how to respond to him. And yet, in spite of those 7 signs and all the other miracles and signs that Jesus did, there were still people who were not convinced about who he was. There were still people who had in their own minds a big question mark about what Jesus was saying and who he represented and whether or not he was trustworthy. And so, after all of that, we're moving into a new section in John's Gospel. We've been working through it bit by bit, chapter by chapter. We ended the last section with Jesus announcing to the crowd and to his disciples that his hour had come. That he'd been living towards this particular moment and it had now arrived. He was now stepping into the moment that his whole mission had been focused towards and that had been leading towards. This was now going to define his ministry. His hour had come. And as he steps into that hour, we move into a different section of John's book. Jesus says in this hour he's going to be glorified. So if you missed the signs, if they didn't convince you, Jesus was announcing to everybody, by the way, we're now entering a new season, a new hour, in which I'm going to display my glory in a way that is amplified compared to what you've seen before. And so theologians, when they look at the Gospel of John, they call the first part of the book of signs, because they're all about these signs that point to Jesus. The second part of the book is called the Book of Glory, because this is the hour that Jesus is headed towards, and this is the moment in which he's going to be glorified for all to see. So if you have missed the signs, or if you're still kind of undecided and still thinking, then get ready to see the glory of God, because Jesus is about to turn up the volume. He's about to amplify who he is. He's about to reveal himself in a way that is unlike what we've seen so far. So, are we up for that? We're going to pick up where we left off. We're in John chapter 13. Babs is going to read for us today. So we're going to read the first 20 verses.
It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin, and he began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not understand now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I am your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. I am not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen, but this is to fulfill this passage of Scripture. He who shared my bread has turned against me. I am telling you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe that I am who I am. Very truly I tell you, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me, and whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me."
Good job. Thank you. So that's how the Book of Glory begins. So if anybody is a bit bemused by that, a bit underwhelmed by that, if that feels like a little bit of an anticlimax in terms of what I built you up to expect, let me try to explain. So, washing feet in the ancient world was considered the absolute worst job that there was in a household. And so it was reserved for the lowest of servants. And so what you see here is the King of Heaven, the Alpha and the Omega, the Anointed One, taking off his outer garments and kneeling before his students, his disciples, and washing their feet. Like I said, that's the Book of Glory beginning. And what he's doing isn't just an incredible act of love and service, but he's actually speaking about something that is coming in this hour. He's speaking about something even more incredible that is soon to happen. Because that same King of Heaven is about to be stripped naked and to take on a grossness that would make washing feet feel like a privilege. See, Jesus' mission, this hour that he was living towards, this moment of glory that he was headed towards and wasn't going to be distracted or diverted from in any way, was that he was going to take on the sin of the whole world. He was going to take on the evil and the filthiness that exists on the face of the earth. Everything that has ever been done that is disgraceful and disgusting. Jesus was going to take it upon himself. He was going to take it upon himself in such a way that he would come to represent the sum total of all filth and brokenness that has ever been done, is being done, and will be done on the face of the earth. To the point that Jesus would then represent everything that God is against. He would represent everything that God hates. He would take on himself all of the judgment of God, all of the wrath of God for the sin that has been committed on this earth. And he would willingly pay the price for that and take the punishment for that, so that sinners could walk free from guilt, free from shame, and they could be reconciled into relationship with God. Glory. looks like. And so in this moment of incredible service to his friends in washing their feet, in this moment of glorious love that he's acting out in front of them, by washing all of the disciples' feet, Jesus is also washing the feet of one of his enemies, Judas. Jesus says that Judas has shown him his heel. In Jesus' day, if you were to show someone your heel, it was an act of utter contempt. It's the same word that is used for being kicked by a horse. It's a word that conjures up a vicious and unwarranted treatment of somebody else. And Jesus is saying that Judas's betrayal of him is all of those things. And yet in that moment, Jesus reaches out to Judas and washes his feet. That's what glory looks like. That's glory in a different league from raising someone from the dead or gifting someone who's never seen before their sight. This is glory. And so the disciples are watching what's going on, and Peter doesn't really understand what's happening. You know, he thinks that Jesus is talking about some kind of ceremonial bath that some of them may well have had because it was Passover. It's called a mikvah. And so Jesus seems to be sort of saying, actually, you're not clean. And so Peter's thinking, well, maybe I didn't do it right. Maybe I should go and do the ceremonial bath again. Or maybe they didn't have one this Passover. It wasn't compulsory. Some people did, some didn't. And so maybe Peter's thinking, we forgot to do that. And Jesus is just correcting us. And Jesus is like, no, that's not what I'm saying. You could have that ceremonial bath and still be unclean. I could wash your feet even, and you would still be unclean. Because what holiness looks like, what glory looks like, isn't what's been done to you. It's not how other people treat you. It's nothing to do with the ceremonies or the rituals that you've gone through. It's about your heart. And it's about your willingness to give yourself and spend yourself for others. That's where you find glory in someone's life. Which leads me to this. Jesus says to the disciples, I'm your teacher and your Lord. That's what you call me, teacher and Lord. And so if I'm your Lord and teacher, you need to follow my example. Notice what Jesus did there? He switched it around. They see him as teacher and Lord. And Jesus says, if I'm your Lord and teacher, follow me. You see, when we see Jesus as primarily our teacher, we reserve the right to not do what he says. Because we always have the excuse of, well, I don't understand. You didn't explain it well enough to me. And so until I understand, until you do a better job teaching me, I don't have to do that. And Jesus reverses that. And he invites the disciples to think of him first and foremost as Lord. And if he's their Lord, what that means is that whenever he says something, they have to just do it, whether they understand it or not. If Jesus is your Lord, you are surrendering to him your understanding. There will be things that he calls you to do that you don't get, that you don't yet understand. And he promises to also be your teacher, but he's going to be your Lord first. And if you allow him to be your Lord, and if you follow him, you will end up on this road to glory. Because that's the challenge that John presents to us. That Jesus says, follow me. Jesus has entered this hour where his ministry is going to culminate in glory that like has never been seen before. And he says, follow me. So Jesus is calling us to follow him into glory. He wants our lives to be glorified just like his was. He wants us to reflect and to display the splendor of our Father, so that when people see us, all they can think of is him, because there's this glory that shines out of us. And so as we begin this book of glory, Jesus gives us our first steps. And our first steps are that Jesus calls us to sacrifice our rights and our status and our reputation and the things that we would like to do for the sake of others. He calls us to serve others, to spend ourselves for others. And he calls us to do that for all others. He calls us to serve those that dislike us, those that have hurt us deeply, those that have betrayed us, those who hate us. Jesus calls us not just to serve them, but to love them and to give ourselves for them. That's the example that God has set for us, that while we were living in contempt of God, while we were showing God our heel, God sent Jesus to die for us. And so Jesus is calling us to follow him into glory, because that's what glory looks like. And he's calling us in doing that to see him first and foremost as Lord, to surrender our understanding. If we're going to walk this road into glory, we're going to have to give up our understanding, because Jesus is going to call us to live and think and act completely differently from the wisdom that is out there and from the experience that we have in here. He's going to call us to walk a different way. And if we're willing to lay down our lives for the sake of others and to be selfless, and if we're willing to surrender our understanding, we'll be able to follow him on this road, that we might become like him. We might bear glory and display glory, God's glory, to the world around us.